All right, people. Review of the week time. So, lot to get into, an awful lot to get into, and a lot to talk about. Before we carry on, have a look there on screen. If you could, I would greatly appreciate if you could hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. It literally only takes a handful of seconds. If you could, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's talk about, before we talk about Anthony Joshua and some other things, let's just briefly talk about the fights that happened over the course of the weekend. So, before we start with Joshua Buatsi, which we will start about, and we will talk at length about that, we'll finish the kind of review of the fights with that. Let's talk about Orlando, Florida. There was two fights in particular that I want to talk about on this card. The first was Pat Brown going for 5-0 against Felix Valera. Very impressive performance by Pat Brown. It's the maturity in which he goes about his job, essentially. You know, he looks very mature in there. This is only his fifth pro fight. And I think that we could potentially have a bit of a star in the making with Pat Brown. He looks really, really good. He really, truly does. He looks something else. In the main event, we had Leonard Perro. I always get his name wrong. Is it Leonard Perro or something like that? I always get his name wrong. He was in there against Jordan Thompson. Now, Jordan Thompson, last time I seen him, he was down at cruiserweight and he was getting, quite frankly, annihilated by Jarrell in a couple of rounds. I think that was in the OVO Arena up in Wembley in 2023. I think he's been out of the ring since then. He since then moved to heavyweight. He was 238 for this fight, so a decent sized heavyweight. It doesn't look that bad in terms of shape, because some people, when they put on a lot of weight, move from cruiser to heavy. It's not natural weight, if you know what I mean. But he looks good there, and I thought going into this fight, Perro would just, would go about it, would do his thing, go about it, given the beat. He took a horrible beating in there, against Jay Apataya. But it was competitive, very competitive. Thompson started a bit slow, and I think that had he maybe started a little bit faster, not giving up a couple of early rounds, it could have been very interesting, because he was really in this fight. Two of the judges, I think, had him losing only by, I think, like 2 rounds, right? So he was in this fight. So Jordan Thompson, I think that he is 32, but he's a heavyweight, so that's not that old for a heavyweight. I think that there's something there with Thompson. I think that certainly at the domestic scene, if he's going to continue on a heavyweight, that he could... look, I'm not saying he's going to win a world title or anything like that, but he certainly could be somewhat useful. Definitely, I think he could be somewhat useful. In terms of the Queensbury show that happened last night, well, let's start with Liam Cameron versus Troy Jones. That's the first fight that I saw last night. And Liam Cameron coming into this fight off the back of a defeat. Yeah, I was going to just double check and make sure he hadn't fought after that. But a defeat to Ben Whittaker in a couple of rounds. And prior to that, he had a draw. Should really have been a win against Ben Whittaker prior to that. So he's coming off the back of some kind of form, but not form at the same time, if you know what I mean. This is his first fight under the Queensbury banner, and he was in there against Troy Jones, who, yes, he had an L himself. I believe they were saying on commentary that he was meant to fight a member of Team Usyk, who I can't remember. Is it Daniel Lappin, the guy's name? Or is that his manager, isn't it? Or Sergei Lappin? He was meant to fight a member of Team Usyk, long and the short of it. Well, Troy Jones went in there, and for me, he soundly beat Liam Cameron. But for some reason, he didn't get the nod. They gave it to Liam Cameron on a unanimous decision, 97-93. I really don't know how you could find that scorecard. That's incredible. 97-93, and then 96-94, 96-94. I, for one, am just going to turn... And do you want to know something strange? 2 of those judges scoring in this fight, the 2 foreign judges, they both scored the main event, which was Buatsi versus Zach Parker. And one of them had Buatsi winning, and the other had a draw. So these 2 judges, they really wanted to get ass back, I'm assuming, judging by some of these scorecards. Because, yeah, for me, Liam Cameron lost this fight, lost it clearly. Troy Jones definitely put a beating on him. Well, he soundly beat him, put it like that. We get to the co-main, which is for the EBU title, the full EBU title, not one of these WBO, European, or IBF. No, the full one. Bradley Ree against Lyndon Arthur. This was really last chance saloon for Lyndon Arthur at this stage of his career. He's 34-35, coming off the back of a loss to Anthony Yard. Prior to that, he hadn't looked amazing, even in a couple of his wins. Bradley Ree, he was looking good. He was a boxer fighter for a couple of years. He was on the undercard, a member of Kell Brook versus Amir Khan, and he was fighting a middleweight. suffered an upset defeat, as it was. It was an upset at the time, to Tyler Denny. We didn't know how good Denny was. And then he kind of just went into just nothingness, really. Came back as a light heavyweight. I can't remember the guy's name there, but he beat him over the summer on the GBM show. Became European champion. This was a really good fight. Don't get me, this was probably the best fight I've seen Lyndon Arthur in. It was brilliant. He showed versatility. He showed his jab. He actually showed because I think he stunned Bradley Ree a couple of times in there, but he himself was very badly stunned in the second round from a lovely, beautifully timed left hook by Bradley Ree. Down went Lyndon Arthur. He was badly hurt as well by that left hook. He was able to recover. I think round 5 he had another bad round, but he was able to get through that. And as the fight progressed, the experience, the jab, everything Lyndon Arthur brought to the game, it just showed. And he was able to ultimately get a majority decision win, and I thought he deserved the win. Do you want to know something crazy? Lyndon Arthur is 2-1. Obviously, he's lost 2 fights and only won 1 fight against Anthony Yarde. But he's the EBU European champion. That's more than Anthony Yarde's ever done in his career. I think Yarde won a Commonwealth title, and that's it. The EBU title is better than being WBO European champion, because that EBU title actually means something. So you could argue, although Anthony Yarde's going for a world title shot and he's won the trilogy with Lyndon Arthur has actually done better in terms of achievements as a professional. I think he was IBO champion. I mean, that's not really anything, but still, they're better achievements, if you know what I mean. Obviously, Anthony Yarde's bank account is probably, I'm sure Lyndon Arthur would like that, but you get what I mean in terms of just achievements as a fighter. You could argue that Lyndon Arthur's actually done more. And then we get to the main event. Now, I've already given my 2 cents on this fight. I've talked about it at great lengths. I've said that I felt that this was a disgraceful decision that Zach Parker won the fight, and I stand by that. I absolutely do. Zach Parker, yes, did he fight dirty at times? Yes. Was the going and moving your head down and kneeling down on the canvas not right? Yes. Should he have been docked a point? Yes, all those things and more. But nevertheless, I do still feel that he was unlucky not to get the decision in this fight. I felt that he was the deserved winner. This is the worst I ever seen Joshua Buatsi. And Joshua Buatsi hasn't been looking good for a couple of fights. And there's been a couple of fights where you've looked at Buatsi and you've thought, not really setting the world alight here. Not really liking what I'm seeing. And I think it's a variety of things. One, do I think he's stagnating a bit with Sugar Hill? Yeah, probably. Or not Sugar Hill. What am I talking about? Sugar Hill. Virgil Hunter. Do I think he stagnated a bit with him? Probably, yeah. There's a very good chance he has. But do I think that there's an element of residual damage from the Callum Smith fight? Because he took a beating in that fight. Yeah, he gave it out pretty well as well. But he took a lot of shots in there from Callum Smith. Do I think there's some damage from that? Yeah, I do. Quite frankly, I do. I think that Joshua Buatsi, I don't know if he can come back from this. He won the fight, but he didn't look good. He looked like a fighter who was, I don't want to say over the hill maybe. He certainly didn't look interested. There was no urgency from Buatsi. You should know that the people at ringside, you should be hearing things. People at ringside all have you behind. Carl Frampton has you behind. The DAZN team have you behind. Everyone thinks you're losing this fight. Where's the urgency? There wasn't any. That's a worry. That's a big worry for Joshua Buatsi. So I don't know what you really do. I don't know. Because it seemed like there was a lack of urgency from Joshua Buatsi even in the matchroom days where he was making 6 figures a fight, fighting 3-4 times a year, and not really content to, or not really, content to fight at that level, not really looking to go and, move up the levels and stuff like that. At the end of the day, he turned down, what was it, £1 million to face Dimitri Bivol? And then went to Boxer. This is just, what's going on here? Is there a lack of confidence in Buatsi maybe? Does he feel that maybe, it's all about making the money? I know I'm never going to beat a Beterbiev or a Bivol, so just make as much money now as I can and just take low risks. Well, that almost backfired. It should have backfired against Zach Parker, quite frankly. So that is the weekend's results. Let's talk, so Everything Boxing, who I get a lot of my boxing news from, Eddie Hearn and Jarrell Miller posing for a picture. Could we see them back together is what he's asking. Well, it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest with you, if Eddie Hearn and Jarrell Miller ended up fighting. We know who'd win that. Ended up, working together again. Because Eddie Hearn, this is why you shouldn't virtue signal, because you become a hypocrite. If you turn around and say, I'm not going to work with drug cheats this, they should be banned, etc., etc., don't go and start working with them. And you work with Jarrell Miller when, I think, had he already had a ban in a different sport, kickboxing? And then obviously he popped. You had Povetkin, you had Canelo, etc., etc., etc. Listen, Miller, I've no sympathy for him. At the end of the day, he's never shown any remorse. And it wasn't like he was taking an over-the-counter supplement that you could say, okay, look, maybe he was a little bit, maybe he took something unbeknownst to him. You know, it does happen. But you should be checking your drinks. The man was taking stuff you have to physically inject, for God's sakes. Jesus Christ. Anthony Joshua to fight in 2025. Chris Mannix asked Eddie Hearn the other day, you've got 3 dates left in 2025 by my count, November, December, and we're working on the Riyadh show on December the 27th. Will we see Anthony Joshua on any of these shows? Eddie Hearn simply replied, yes. That's interesting, people. That's all I'll say. It's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Anthony Joshua, because first we heard that he would be back this year, then we heard that he wouldn't, and then we're hearing that he will. But apparently it's going to be in an undercard if he does come back. So that would mean then he's not going to be in there with anybody amazing. You wouldn't expect it coming in after the back of an injury, a year and a half's inactivity, and a devastating knockout defeat. So you wouldn't imagine he'd necessarily be in there with the cream of the crop or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see who they put Anthony Joshua in there with, if indeed we do see him by the end of the year, which Eddie Hearn seems to insinuate that we will. But what's very interesting about Anthony Joshua is this article that I see here in the Ring magazine, which says the following. Is Anthony Joshua about to join Team Usyk? It says Anthony Joshua could be about to join Team Usyk after visiting the Ukrainians' training camp or training facilities in Valencia. Joshua is attempting to secure the optimum training setup for the closing stages of his career, and Spain was high on the list. The British superstar has not boxed since he was knocked out by Daniel Dubois at Wembley Stadium in London 13 months ago in his unsuccessful attempt to become a 3-time heavyweight champion. As a result of his inactivity, the 36-year-old has dropped out of the Ring magazine rankings, but return to the ring is apparently imminent. And the Ring has learned that he could be about to up sticks for the east coast of Spain to do training at Oleksandr Usyk's camp, which is managed by Sergei Lapin. Joshua is in the process of making a decision whether to head there full time. It's not unusual for Joshua to tour gyms before making a decision before where to go. Before linking up with Robert Garcia in 2022, incidentally, as he prepared for his ill-fated rematch with Oleksandr, that's what it says here. Joshua met with a number of US-based trainers, including Ronnie Shields and Eddie Reynoso, eventually chose Garcia, and then lost to Usyk on points for the second consecutive time. He then employed the Ring magazine's 2017 Fight Trainer of the Year, Derek James, for his comeback victories against Franklin and Hellenius before switching to another coach. Next, it was Ben Davison, who works out of Harlow and Essex, England, and the pair enjoyed an initial fruitful relationship, with Joshua crushing Otto Wallin and Francis Ngannou on his watch. However, Davis and his team were unable to prevent Joshua from suffering a 5th-round knockout defeat to Daniel Dubois. Joshua's brother just recently described Joshua as back in full-time training camp. During an interview with the Ring magazine earlier this month, he said the 2012 Olympic gold medalist is preparing for the final roll of the dice in his career in 2026. That is interesting. So, Anthony Joshua, Team Oleksandr Usyk. I guess if you want to become the best, you've got to be around the best. And obviously, the setup Usyk has over there in Spain, in Valencia, the training team, everything, it's like a Rolls Royce. It's like a well-oiled machine. It just works, right? And I think that's what Anthony Joshua is looking for. You know, we haven't heard anything really from him or Ben Davison. We haven't heard much from anything from him or Derek James. It is getting a bit worrying, you know, with Joshua. Before it was, why is he staying with Robin McCracken when this doesn't look like it's working and he's stagnating? And people were saying this even prior to him losing to Andy Ruiz. But he stayed with him. It was loyalty, and then he leaves him, and then he's had Robert Garcia, then he's had Derek James, then he's had Ben Davison, then we could have another one. At what point does enough become enough? You know, I think Joshua, for me, looked the best under Robert Garcia. That, for me, even though it was only one fight, he looked aesthetically brilliant. He fought very well. The only problem was he was in there with Oleksandr Usyk. It's as simple as that. He was in there with Oleksandr Usyk, and that is the way it was. So it would be interesting to see what happens. Like, who would train him? Would it be Anatoly Lomachenko? Because Usyk has changed. Usyk's another example, actually, is someone who's changed trainers quite a good few number of times. See James Ali Bashir, who would be actually a very good shout, to be honest with you, for Anthony Joshua. But he's also had other people, you know, he's had, now some of them, I can't really pronounce their names because a lot of them would be Eastern European, Ukrainian. But, you know, he's changed a good bit. So would they get one member of his team and be like, you're the guy for AJ? Let's wait and see. Maybe because AJ is looking, and he's desperate for that Tyson Fury fight. Maybe he feels that employing members of the team who helped beat Tyson Fury, who masterminded the plan, maybe that will help him. Who knows? Who knows? Let's talk about, very briefly, Jake Paul and Tank Davis, because it looks for all the world like that fight won't actually be going ahead. So it seems anyway. Statement from Most Valuable Promotions immediately are investigating in learning of the civil, I'm going to just say it, lawsuit, because YouTube is so precise about these things, lawsuit filed against Gervonta Davis in Miami County on October the 30th of this year. At this time, we are gathering information and reviewing the details to ensure any decision we make is thoroughly vetted. We unequivocally condemn any form of violence and are committed to handling this matter with dignity and respect for all involved. We will make a determination on the next stage or the next steps once we have completed our review and consulted with appropriate parties. Until then, we will not be commenting further. This is in light of allegations, and we do have to use those words, allegations. That's what they are, right? Going against Tank Davis. Now, he's had them before. I distinctly remember, was it his fight? No, sorry. It was allegations with Rolly Romero that curtailed their fight in late 2021. Ultimately, he ended up fighting Pitbull Cruz, which was a very good fight. Very good fight. We do have to bear in mind that they are at this minute in time allegations, but the way the world is nowadays, if there's something like that going around, they'll probably scrap said fight, at which point it leaves, will it even go ahead actually? For me, that fight itself was just an exhibition. It was nothing serious. It really wasn't anything serious. So for me to see it scrapped, I really don't care. I don't like the fight. So it's not a fight like I'd be, losing. Oh my God, we gotta have Jake Paul, Tank Davis. There's so many it's so intriguing. It's just that. It's just like meh for me. Dennis McCann remains suspended. At the WBO convention, the British Boxing Board of Control's Rob Smith has confirmed that Dennis McCann is still suspended following his 2024 failed drugs test. And he had a lot of stuff going on in there. So I would imagine Dennis McCann is in deep you-know-what, and I would imagine he is going to get the absolute book thrown at him. I would imagine anyway. Callum Simpson, the European champion Callum Simpson, and Troy Williamson are set to meet on December the 20th in Leeds, according to the EBU. The fight will land on Boxer. The fight will land on a Boxer show after Matchroom Boxer agreed a deal for this fight. I'm assuming Troy Williams is now with Matchroom, and we obviously know Callum Simpson, big ticket seller up there in Barnsley. Well, Leeds, I don't know what county Leeds is. It Leeds in Yorkshire, sorry. So, yeah, that's actually not a bad fight, to be fair. Genuinely, I actually have to say that's not a bad fight, to be fair. So that's one of, that's two shows that Boxer will have done on BBC, which means that they've only got 2 more shows left on their deal. So what is going on there? What is actually going on there? Ryan Garcia and Mario Barros are closing in on a deal for the WBC title. This is according to Mike Coppinger. In the first half of next year, officials from Garcia promoter Golden Boy and PBC have exchanged contracts as per sources. Ryan Garcia has just lost. Like, he literally just lost to Rolly Romero. I still can't believe he lost that fight, to be honest with you. Absolutely. Just Romero, of all people. Seriously. Why should he just walk straight back into a world title fight? I don't get that. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. Ryan Garcia is one of the biggest names in boxing, so there you go. That's the reason why. Listen, although I still can't believe he lost to Rolly, I still can't believe that a 45, 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao, he beat Mario Barros, let's be real. So Ryan Garcia should have no trouble dealing with him. He really shouldn't. He should genuinely have no trouble dealing with him, in my opinion. So that is that. I think pretty much, people, that is it. I will leave it there. So, for now, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you could, I would greatly appreciate if you could smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. I hope we all, whoever are listening, have a great week this week. It's going to be good, man. It's going to be a good week. I hope you enjoy it. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Until next time, people. Peace.